Arguably the most volatile site in the Middle East, what Jews call the Temple Mount and Muslims call the Haram al-Sharif. The compound in Jerusalem today, the site of clashes after a firebomb was thrown at a security post. Our defense correspondent Daniel Tsemach is reporting for us in the old city of Jerusalem. Daniel, take us through the events of today leading up to this point.
Well, Nareed, as you said, the day began with a firebomb or Molotov cocktail that was thrown at an Israeli security post on the Temple Mount compound itself. It led to one Israeli police officer being lightly wounded by smoke inhalation. But what it led to really are severe clashes that have broken out throughout the day. Now, there have been at least 3 arrested, believed to be associated with that attack. The Israeli security forces arrested them shortly after the incident. But throughout the day, we have seen firsthand the clashes that have broken out. Generally speaking, we're talking about clashes that break out around the prayer time. And as you can see here, those security forces are moving to another area. And it's important to track their movements because they're usually following crowds of Muslim worshippers or Palestinians out of fear that they might again start chanting, start protesting, and then things generally turn slightly violent at least. We have seen physical altercations break out between the Israeli security forces and the Muslim worshippers on numerous occasions. As I said, though, the highest point of escalation is always either before the prayers or, generally speaking, after those prayers.
And Danny, there are much bigger implications here over those clashes because simply this is such a sensitive religious site, isn't it?
Exactly, and it's important actually to just address how this site is controlled and how it's administrative on the various different points. If we take a look, the security control of this site is done by the Israeli police. They maintain the security protocols here, while the Jordan's Islamic Waqf has administrative control over the area, and that Jews and non-Muslims are not allowed to pray on the site. It's a very important point, but they are allowed restricted access among certain times throughout the day. When we arrived here earlier, that was one of those times where only Jews were allowed inside the Old City. But overall, throughout the day here, the Old City has been largely closed to those Muslim worshippers. That is excusing those who live within the Old City. Everyone else is not allowed in unless it's tourists or Israelis.
Daniel, I understand that your team actually encountered some of that sort of upheaval near the Temple Mount, the Al-Aqsa compound earlier today. What happened?
Well, in one of those times where there was a group of Palestinians, they were standing right outside the Lion's Gate. That's very close to the area that's been closed off for 16 years now, the Gate of Mercy. Now, they were gathering there. The Palestinians and Muslim worshippers were gathering there. Israeli security forces were on site. And at some point after several minutes of chanting, the Israeli security forces approached the group of Palestinians. And that's when things turned slightly violent. There were physical altercations. We got caught up in the middle of it. Our cameraman was actually knocked down by those security forces, because in that moment of drama or chaos, really, if you're standing in between the protesters and you're standing between the security forces, chances are you're going to get caught up in that sort of chaos. And it's happened numerous times throughout the day. We're talking about very tight quarters here, so it happens often, very difficult to navigate. But that just goes to show how tense and difficult it is to administer security here, and also not allowing the situation to escalate further by providing too much security.
And Daniel, those clashes at the Temple Mount, not the only violence today between Israelis and Palestinians.
Absolutely not. Another area, an epicenter of tension and violence when we're talking about Israeli-Palestinian conflict, is in the West Bank city of Hebron. There today, there was an attempted stabbing as a Palestinian approached Israeli security forces there on site. That Palestinian assailant was shot and killed at the scene. But definitely a day of a lot of tension, not only here in Jerusalem, as I said, also in Hebron. So the security presence there has also been on high alert as the tensions continue to rise throughout this part of Israel and the West Bank.
And Daniel, yet one more story you're updating us on. A group of Israeli soldiers that already had been convicted and sentenced for beating Palestinian prisoners. The video now coming to light.
Yeah, media was actually pressuring the Israeli judicial system and security establishment to release the footage that, as a result of which was documented by one of the soldiers accused in this attack. There are 5 soldiers involved, and their sentencing range from 6.5 months to 2 months. They are filmed by their own cell phone, beating 2 Palestinian detainees who were suspected of assisting a Palestinian terrorist after a shooting attack that left 2 of those soldiers' comrades killed. They are seen laughing, listening to music, telling them to say hello to the camera. The Palestinian who are being beaten, the soldiers are heard laughing, telling them to look at the camera, say hello. And you can also hear the Palestinians that were detained screaming out in pain as a result of what we understand were not only slaps, which are seen on camera, but also bludgeoning to the head. Very, very, very serious incident, and as a result of which those 5 soldiers will all have also a demotion of their rank and will be on probation. But the most severe consequence as far as their sentencing is concerned is indeed 6.5 months for 3 of those soldiers.
All right, Daniel Tsemach.